Should your homesick student stay at college, or is it time to seriously talk about whether they should come home? Here's what most parents miss. You can't really decide that based on a few bad grades or how many times they called home crying. You need a full picture. That's why today I'm going to show you my CARES framework. It's 5 specific areas to assess that will help you decide whether your student is experiencing homesickness that will fade or something more serious. My CARES model includes connections, academics, routines, emotional health, and sustainability. By the end, you'll know which questions to ask and how to do it in a way that won't shame or shut your student down. So let's start with connections because honestly, it's the deal breaker when it comes to the impact that homesickness can have. Here's what you need to know. Students who feel belonging are more likely to stay in school, use campus resources, ride out those tough semesters, whereas students who feel isolated are more likely to want to come home. The first question to ask is, are they homesick because they're missing home and their surroundings, or is it truly about the goodness of fit of that college environment with what they thought their college experience would be like? Here's the difference. Normal homesickness has times when it feels manageable and can come and go as students start to build connections. But if they've been there for several weeks, maybe even a whole semester, they're genuinely trying, going to events, joining activities, showing up, and they still feel like an outsider, that might be telling you something deeper about the fit. Instead of grilling them with 100 questions, simply just zoom out and ask, who do you see yourself hanging out with if you stay? Do you have groups that you already belong to? Another really important question is, what is the goodness of fit of the whole vibe of the campus? Is it all about partiers and they haven't found anyone that like them that doesn't want to party? Or these days, the conservative or liberal vibe of the campus can be really important. What you're listening for is this. Do they have some connections? They have moments where they can laugh and tell you stories about funny dorm things that are happening, but they're just feeling a little bit awkward about fitting in? Or have they completely shut down? They've stopped trying. They've stopped going to campus events. They've stopped trying to make any connections in their dorm. That's when connections is waving a big red flag and might be signaling something more than just homesickness. Sometimes it's kind of counterintuitive. I've had clients who their student went to a really big school, especially if they came from a small high school. And the thought was, if I go to this really big school, of course it's going to be easy for me to find connections. Look at all the events and activities that go on. And what they really find is that as they walk around campus, I remember one mom telling me their student was like, literally every person that passes me by that doesn't say hello reminds me of how lonely and how homesick I am. And so it's not the size of the school. It's not how far away they went from school. It really is about, can they find their people? Can they find those meaningful connections? Now let's move on to the A in our CARES model, academics. And you don't have to be taking notes on all of this stuff. I'm giving you a free cheat sheet. The link is in the description, so you can grab it and have all this information when you need it. Okay, this is why academics is important. Research shows that homesickness lowers first semester GPA and doubles the risk for your student not returning for that second year. Here's one thing that's easy to miss. Homesickness and academic fit can look the same on the surface. They're missing classes, they're talking about being overwhelmed, but they're very different and the solutions are also very different. A simple way to sort that out is to ask them to imagine staying and look at their schedule. Which classes are they flat out dreading and which ones do they feel at least are manageable or even kind of interesting? Is there a professor they're connecting with? If they light up when they talk about certain courses, but they get heavy and shut down when they talk about their major requirements, that might point to an academic fit problem. And actually, that's pretty fixable. Changing a major, adjusting a class load, or pivoting their plan is usually way easier than students think, and it's certainly way easier than unenrolling and re-enrolling in a new school. But if they say, I just can't focus on anything because I don't want to be here, and that feeling is spilling into every single class, that's a different story. So in this academic piece, you're really asking, if we took the homesickness out of the equation, would these classes and majors still feel wrong, or would they feel doable? That difference can tell you a lot about whether this is a stay and adjust situation or a sign of something deeper that needs change. I found that parents are surprised at the unintentional pressure they put on their student to stay at a particular school. Maybe it's the parent's alma mater, or to choose a certain major. You said you wanted to be a doctor your whole life. And so if you let your student know that their well-being is what's most important, Sometimes that can be the nudge that they need to say, okay, I actually really want to explore other things at this school than just focus on coming home. Now that you have a sense of the role that connections and academics play in this homesickness equation, let's talk about the third aspect of our CARES model, routines. Those core eat, sleep, shower, move your body parts of your day. Here's the key research on routines. For first year students, sleep, self care absolutely take a hit. They're the first things that go when they're trying to manage all those balls in the air. But when there's a core, not eating, not sleeping, not showering, when habits fully break down, it can be an indicator of something more, a mental health crisis. It can be easy to miss this difference, especially if you're not checking in on your student visually or they're more private. Normal homesickness might look like them calling home a little more than you thought they would. They cry, they feel low, but they're still getting out of bed. They're still grabbing meals. Life feels harder, but it hasn't stopped. True concern is when your student is in bed 12 to 14 hours a day. They've stopped showering. They've stopped eating. They're skipping classes. Someone comes to their dorm room to ask them to go to the lounge to play a game, and they're always just saying no. Those types of signs can be a red flag for really a deeper emotional impact of homesickness or another mental health crisis. One way to assess for this is just ask, hey, walk me through a typical day. Who do you eat breakfast with? Or what time do you get up? It's a little hard to do that without sounding like an interrogation. But if you seem genuinely interested, maybe you throw in, oh my gosh, I never took 8 a.m. classes because I knew I could never get up for that. You can maybe lighten the message so your student doesn't think you're interrogating them about their day. If their routines have completely fallen apart, that's a sign that they need more help. Whether they stay at school or come home isn't really the issue. It's a matter of getting those routines and those basic life functions back online. For the E in our CARES model, emotional health. And remember, there's that cheat sheet in the description that you can grab, so don't feel like you have to remember all this. Emotional health is really important because mental health has become the top reason students withdraw from college. A big percentage of students who leave early point to anxiety, depression, or both, and for many of them, it started looking like intense homesickness that just never got better. The hard truth that parents of homesick kids try to figure out every single day, is this just expected homesickness, or is this a sign of something deeper like anxiety and depression? I don't want to miss that. So let's get a little clarity on that piece of this CARES puzzle. Normal emotional adjustment to college sounds like, I miss you so much, and some days are really hard, but then in the next breath, they can tell you some funny moment with their roommate or a class they kind of like or something they're looking forward to. There are still pockets of joy and funniness and relief mixed in with some sadness or overwhelm. Clinical concern sounds very different. Every day feels heavy, nothing feels fun. They might be having panic attacks, feeling constantly on edge, or they might say things like, I just want to disappear, or I don't see the point. That's more than homesickness. That is some emotional suffering that needs attention, regardless of whether your student stays at that school or not. And I say that because if they're experiencing that level of emotional crisis, staying at school or coming home, those problems are just going to follow them. So you really want to make sure if your students reach that level of concern, you really get campus resources or a therapist involved to help you sort out how do we address this issue, regardless of whether our student comes home or stays at that college. Here's an important disclaimer. If your student is expressing any thoughts of self-harm, please get emergency help for them. Make sure they know the nationwide mental health crisis number, 988, at the time of filming this video, and that they know what campus resources are available to them long before they need them. And now the S in our CARES model, sustainability. If you take a step back and look at what's going on right now with your student, is this doable for you and for your student over time? Here's why the sustainability pillar matters so much. Even if your student is trying to push through homesickness, when connection and academics and routine and emotional health keep cycling from crisis to okay and back again, they're not thriving, they're just surviving. And that is not healthy for you or your student. As a parent of two college students, I get that it's difficult to admit patterns like this. Patterns like one week they're doing great and they love it there and they can't wait to go to the next activity. And the next one, maybe even 2 days later, they hate it. They don't have any friends. And they're just in this constant cycle of limbo, like one foot out the door, not really settling in, not really adjusting, not really trying to make the most of their experience because they have this homesickness thread through it all. And you are exhausted too. You're riding that emotional roller coaster with them, and there's really no end in sight. It's not healthy. It's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for your student, and it's not going to result in a meaningful college experience. So here's a check-in for you and your student. Are you seeing any momentum? Is it getting a little bit better with every passing week or after each break? Are they a little more willing to try some activities or talk to their professors and work harder on their grades? Or are they literally just white knuckling it through week after week? If it's just surviving across our cares model with no real signs of thriving, that's your signal. Something needs to shift. More campus support, changing majors, quitting a sport, coming home to regroup, or a different school entirely. Sustainability isn't about toughing it out forever. It's about recognizing whether this current path you're on is working so you can make an informed decision together. Here's the bottom line. CARES isn't there so you can prove that they should stay or yank them in panic. It's simply to give you a framework so you're looking at more factors than just my student's crying all the time and they want to come home. Now let's talk about the part that I really want you to stick around for, which is how to implement this CARES model, how to talk to your student about it without shaming them or shutting them down. The first thing you want to do is make sure the time is right. If they are in crisis, if they are crying really hard on the other end of the phone, it is not the time to bring up the CARES model. It's also not the time to bring it up like via a text or in a, I guess, a sassy way. Like, I guess it's time to look at all the reasons why you don't want to be at school. So a way you can introduce it is, I know that you hate feeling like this. And actually, I came across this framework that we can look at all the pieces of college and let's figure out together whether you should stay or come home. Besides setting it up right, the next thing you need to do is be empathetic. I know part of you and your soul isn't really feeling that way. Like, I don't know what I would do either if I was this stressed, or you have so many pressures on you today. I probably would have been a terrible college student. Tell your student that. Help them know that you are really empathizing with how difficult the situation is. Because I promise if you start with, you're going to mess up your scholarship, or, well, how bad is it there? Or can you just stick it out for another 6 months? You're almost done. Those type of comments just add shame and will shut your student down and they'll stop coming to you for solutions. And that's not what you want. Otherwise, you wouldn't still be here watching my video. Here's my favorite expert tip after being a therapist for young people for 25 years. If you don't know what to say, just ask more questions. Why did you think that was hard? My favorite is, how is that different than you thought it would be? That will tell you a lot about what's going on in your student's mind. Or if you had a magic wand, what would you magically change about this situation? And again, it can be hard if your student's a little bit more private and they don't want to talk about things. But questions like this that are really genuinely information seeking can sometimes disarm them and they'll be willing to open up. And I guess to that end too, it's okay to admit to them that this is awkward for you too. You are on their side. You are 100% committed to helping them see through what's going to happen here. And if you've made some comments that were less than helpful in the past, then just own up to that. And you could say, I've never been here before either. And I'm sorry if that came across a little judgy. I didn't know what to say, but I'm not in your shoes. And I don't know all these other factors that are going on. So let's look at them together so we can make an informed decision. And this might be the most important piece of this whole video. Once they make their decision, please back them up 100%. We all make decisions throughout our life where maybe 10 years later, you're like, yeah, maybe I should have stayed at that job, or maybe I should have got out of that relationship a lot earlier. There's always second guessing that goes on once you make a decision, but you are modeling for your students such an important life skill. If you can, once they make their decision, 100% move forward with that and help them make the most of the decision that they made without adding to that pressure. So the best thing you can do at the end of all of this, regardless of whether your student decides to stay or go, is to 100% back their decision. So I know that's a lot. And again, that CARES model with all this information is in that pre-cheat sheet in the link in the description. So make sure you grab that. Before you go though, if you're like me, I know that sometimes our parent brains go places that just aren't helpful. Like you start filling in the blanks. Oh, well, if my kid's homesick and they come home, that means I was a bad parent, or oh, they weren't ready. And those kinds of thoughts can really derail you from doing right by your student. So if you want to learn more about how to tackle those or even what those thoughts are that might be getting in the way, the video on your screen right now, I talk about that. Go ahead and watch that, and I'll see you soon.